How much RAM does Kali Linux use when running a live version off a USB thumb drive? So you got to get a thumb drive, and then you're going to have to make sure you have enough RAM. So 4 gig of RAM, but 8 gig of RAM is better. So if you right click on your taskbar and go to Task Manager and go to Performance and then Memory, it'll tell you how much RAM you have here. I have 16 gigs of RAM, which is actually kind of small these days. You see, I have total 16, but 7 is being used by Windows. It says in use 7.1. 8.7 is available. So I should have plenty to just run a stripped down version of Kali. So here I read somewhere about 2 gigs or less, but I don't know about that one. That one might be wrong. So it could be up to 8 gigs. So in general, the more RAM you have, the faster your computer runs and your applications run. When we install Kali, it will create partitions on your thumb drive. This is my hard drive for Windows. It's my C partition. I only have one partition on my hard drive. If I right-click Windows and go to Computer Management, or well, here, let's just go to Disk Management. It shows me here, this is my hard drive, and I have one partition. This is my external hard drive. Now, when you set up Kali, there's different ways to do it, but in general, there's a root partition, a swap partition, and a home partition. Okay, so if you go to Google AI and say, what are the Linux partitions? So that's the standard: root, home, and swap. So here I was saying, what is the Linux root partition for? What is the Linux swap partition for? And what is the Linux home partition for? And they have that right here. Root partition is the master partition where the entire operating system is installed. Home partition is for your personal data. I think a lot of Linux these days, they don't bother with the home partition. You just do root and swap. So the swap partition, this acts as a dedicated virtual memory. So virtual memory. When your physical RAM fills up, The Linux kernel moves inactive data to the swap partition to keep the system stable and prevent out-of-memory crashes. Okay, so that's the tough one to understand. It's easy to understand root. That's where the operating system is installed. That's where Kali is. The home partition, when I was taking a Linux class, my teacher said one time, everybody's folder, each student had their own folder, was in the home partition. Then the next time he gives the class, all he has to do is erase the home partition and put in the new students' names. He didn't have to disrupt the root partition, because the home partition with all the student folders was a separate part on the hard disk. The swap partition, did you ever hear a computer start thrashing? It's like you can hear it kind of going, it's thrashing. Yeah. It takes stuff out of memory, out of RAM, stores it on the hard drive because it ran out of RAM. It's shifting things around back and forth. And it used to be an actual partition on the hard drive. These days it's a virtual memory and it's just a file where it stores stuff. So here, this one we're getting kind of deep here. But this is why you need to study Linux, are the 3 Linux partitions: root, swap, and home. Real physical partitions. No. Root, swap, and home are not required to be separate physical partitions, nor do they even have to be separate virtual partitions. They can all live together inside a single physical partition on your hard drive or solid-state drive. So depending on how your Linux distribution installer is configured, or how you manually set it up, these 3 components will exist in one of 2 configurations. Okay, and you can read through that. We'll go over it more later. I just wanted to get you thinking about it now. So hard drives. When you have a hard drive, a hard drive is called storage. So this is a picture of your hard drive. See these platters? When you go File, Save, and you save a picture to your desktop, it's saved on one of these platters. See here, there's like 3 platters on this one. So inside the hard drive there's platter, read-write heads, the actuator, the spindle, the PCB. So the read-write head is what actually writes your file, your picture, to the hard drive. So that understanding things like that would be hard drive technology. What I wanted to bring up here was hard drives are storage. You store stuff on your hard drive. Common sense, right? RAM is called memory. Okay? When you turn off your computer, everything in RAM is gone. Okay? You start your computer up. It takes the operating system off the hard drive and runs it in RAM. Okay? New hard drives are solid state, like RAM memory. Solid state hard drive. So inside a solid state hard drive, you can see it's just a bunch of chips. This would be your regular hard drive. This would be a solid state hard drive, SSD. So we create partitions on the hard drive. Okay? So we create partitions on the hard drive. Then we format the hard drive partitions. So we create the partition, then we format it. We have to format it to install stuff on it. Okay? When we want to erase a hard drive, you can just delete things. Like here we delete the word, but that doesn't actually erase it off the hard drive. All it does is erases a link to the picture, to the file. The actual picture or file is still on the hard drive. When the computer needs that space, then it'll write over it. So that's why they have wipe. You wipe a hard drive to totally erase it. And if you remember a few years ago, BleachBit was a popular thing on the news. They want to totally erase the phones. They would BleachBit it. Well, that's just a wipe. Wipe is actually fairly common. When installing Linux and creating the partitions, do the partitions need to be formatted? Yes, the partitions must be formatted with a specific file system so the operating system can read and write files to it. However, if you are using a modern Linux installer, you do not need to format them beforehand, as the installation wizard can handle the formatting automatically during the setup process. When installing Windows, does the order of formatting and partitions matter? Yes, the order matters. You must partition the hard drive before you can format it. Why order matters. Partitioning creates the boundaries. It carves out the raw disk space into distinct usable sections. Formatting prepares the space. It installs a file system like NTFS inside an existing partition. Okay, so I don't want to get too deep in this. I just wanted to make you aware of a few of these terms. So this is why taking a computer repair course would come in handy, because they would cover a lot of these topics. And studying Windows Server, how to install Windows Server, would also come in handy, so you understand the difference between installing Linux and installing Windows. Because you're going to be asked to work with both. Somewhere along your educational journey, make sure you to study the other computer systems too. Okay, so we'll call her a day there. See ya.